Hi, my name is Payanna and welcome to my book club. Now, I was randomly flicking through the internet, like you do, and I came across this webpage with a list, like there exist so many on the internet these days, and it kind of annoyed me. Now, I'm the kind of person that gets annoyed with a lot of things on a daily basis, but when it concerns books, yeah. So this person had written this page in which they were saying, oh no, Game of Thrones is over. The end has come and now whatever are we going to do? Who will save us from this terrible past? What are we going to do now? My God, help us! And here comes the answer in the form of a list of books to help you get over the fact that Game of Thrones is now finished. Only it's not. Game of Thrones has come to a conclusion on the TV series version. However, there are still 2 novels that we are waiting for. There are still 2 novels to be released. It is not over. It is still very much alive and well. Now, I have issues with the TV version of Game of Thrones, which I'm not going to go into. But you know that person that always seems to be there when you're watching a movie or a TV series and who's always like, oh wait, that's not what happens in the book. Hey, hang on, I'll tell you what happens in the book. Or the book is so much better. And to understand that bit, you have to have read the book. I am that person. Hi. So yeah, I'm one of those annoying people who actually read the book before it became a TV series, like before it was famous. And I mean, I remember watching season 1 and I actually enjoyed season 1. I thought it was really good. And I mean, George R.R. Martin actually wrote a lot of it. And he had a lot to say about it, which was interesting because, obviously when the actual author is involved with the making of the movie or the TV show, usually it's better than it could be, because my God, don't let film people get hold of these things, because 9 times out of 10 they make a complete mess of it. But I actually thought the first part was pretty good. But because I watched most of it with my boyfriend, and he thought it was a very difficult experience for him, because I was basically being like that, being like, that's not what happens in the book, and he would just be like, shut up, just shut the fuck up and let me watch this. He doesn't read much. Yeah. So no, Game of Thrones isn't over, and if you're not happy with the TV series and you want to go and sign that petition or whatever, just don't. Just sit down and read the books. You will find them a lot more satisfying. So, and it shouldn't be, oh, here's a list of books to help you get over the end of Game of Thrones. It should be, here is a list of books to assist in you waiting for book number 6, because we have been waiting an awfully long time now. I think it was due originally to be released in 2016, if I remember rightly, and we are now in 2019 and we're still waiting. So it is a long wait. And I did love that interview with George R.R. Martin when he was talking to Stephen King, when he just turns to him and goes, how do you write so fast? How do you do it? I can't do that. Writers have their, different speeds of writing, and there's nothing to be done about that, I'm afraid. I'm still waiting for part 3 of Leah Havel's New Victoria, and part 2 of Familiar Things. Also been waiting since 2016. Sometimes these things take time, but don't worry, I have the answer. I possess the truth. So like I said, this list kind of annoyed me because A, Game of Thrones isn't over, so shut up. And also because I just thought it was odd, because the first thing on the list was the Silmarillion by Tolkien. Yeah, okay, why not? But don't people kind of... I mean, surely if you're a high fantasy freak, then you have read the Silmarillion. Like, everyone's read the Silmarillion, surely. Brandon Sanderson appeared 3 times on this list. So this was a list of 10 like series or fantasy series or authors which basically was reduced by quite a lot because, you know, it featured 3 times the same author. Now, Brandon Sanderson is a brilliant fantasy author, but he apparently so brilliant to whoever made this list that he deserved to be mentioned 3 times. Surely once is enough. Just tell people, just read Brandon Sanderson, because his books are amazing. Just read them, surely. Trudi Canavan wasn't mentioned. I kind of think Trudi Canavan's a pretty big authority in the fantasy writing world. Maybe I'm mistaken, I don't know, that's just my opinion. The only woman on the list was Robin Hobb, I think. I mean, all these authors deserve to be on that list. I'm not saying that they weren't. I just thought the list was a bit odd. So yeah, this is my list of a fantasy series that you should read while you're waiting for part 6 and 7 of Game of Thrones. Number 1. The Alcatraz series by Brandon Sanderson. Yeah, I'm a hypocrite. So a lot is made about Brandon Sanderson. Yeah, and it is well deserved. But this isn't a high fantasy series. I'm sorry, but I thought it was worth mentioning because it's not. I never heard of it until quite recently. I didn't know that he'd written this series, and because it tends to be the high fantasy stuff that is put forward, like, oh, look at these wonderful trilogies and these wonderful novels, and they are wonderful. But this, though, I think this is a kind of thing that you're like, oh yeah, I'm doing this just for fun. I think it was kind of the idea behind this. So this is a story of a boy, so it is set in the real world, it's just fantasy. And this boy, whose name is Alcatraz, has been orphaned, he's never known his parents, and he's grown up in various, you know, families who've taken him in over the years, only he never stays long with any of them because he has the rather annoying habit of breaking absolutely everything. He's a nice boy, but destructive. He later on discovers that he is, I don't know if magician's the right word, but the fact that he breaks everything is actually a special gift bestowed upon him by his family, who are all great gifted people in the sort of same way. And yes, he meets a lot of other people who have similar gifts, one of which speaks a load of gibberish, one of which is always late, and they are very proud of these gifts. And so they should be, because they do help them a lot with their endeavours, which is to bring down the evil librarians that control the world. Honestly, it's hilarious. So yeah, Alcatraz by Brandon Sanderson. And that's the last time we're going to mention him in this video, so bye-bye! Number 2. The Black Magician Trilogy by Trudi Canavan. So Trudi Canavan, who is an Australian author and also a woman, because women can write fantasy as well. So Sonia lives in a big city where there's a lot of rich people, and every year there is what they call the purge in order to boot out all the plebs, because who wants to see poor people in a beautiful, lovely city? We don't want them here, we want them out. This purge is supervised by wizards who work at the university, the Wizard University, which obviously you can only go to if you are from rich to privileged families, which she obviously isn't. She picks up a stone and puts all her anger and rage into it and then lobs it at one of the wizards, who put up a shield in order to protect himself from projectiles, only her stone makes it through the shield and strikes him in the head. At which point Sonia discovers that she has magical powers, rather a lot of magical powers that tend to go off at rather awkward moments. And this is a problem for her because obviously she doesn't want to go to the snobby wizards who are at the university, but nor can she stay on her own with her friends because wherever she goes seems to end up burning down. Eventually the wizards find her and she is offered a place at the university. Because they can't let a wizard that powerful run around free or the world will blow up. So what I loved about this novel is the fact that it kind of goes on in stages, and every time it sort of, you know, you start off with one problem and then something happens, and then there's a bigger problem, and then there's a bigger problem, and there's a bigger problem. It starts off with a girl with magical powers running away from wizards, which is the first problem. Then she goes to the wizard university and she's obviously very poor, whilst all the other children are from rich families, so she gets bullied. So problem number 2. Problem number 3, she discovers that the the head of this university is using black magic, which is forbidden, and he becomes her mentor. So another problem. And then the black magic is discovered and they get exiled. Another problem. And then there's the fact that they're exiled and that they're being hunted. So it just keeps going up and up until it ends in a full-blown war. So yeah, it's a novel that does very much just keeps escalating into the levels of kind of seriousness. Wonderful. So there's 3 books. That's a trilogy. There's also a prequel to this, and a sequel trilogy, and another trilogy in between those two, and all the rest of Trudi Canavan stuff. So on top of Brandon Sanderson's hundreds of novels, there's at least 20 to be getting on with. Number 3. I have talked about Blake Charlton before, but I'm going to do it again because I think he is epically brilliant. This man created a new type of magic, a new system for magic, which in a literary series that is frankly oversaturated is an extraordinary thing to do. And I think it's sad that the Spellwright trilogy only circulated in like high fantasy nerdy circles. It should be more out there. It's really extraordinary. It's a bit hard to get your head round at first, but I've already made a video about it. It's really, really worth the struggle. I really, just go and watch my other video. I'll link it below. Number 4. Markus Heitz and the Dwarves. So no one ever frankly goes into the dwarves in high fantasy because we know they're there, right? They are there. They turn up. They exist. They are sort of small people that are very strong. They live in mountains and they mine things. But have you ever wondered how their kingdoms work, how their power struggles go forth? Markus Heitz is here to provide the answer. Between the struggles of regaining a crown, finding out who the new ruler is going to be, battling orcs and ogres and albs, who are dark elves, and unicorns going extinct, and a lot of other stuff happens in this series. So there's another 5 books for you there. Get stuck in. Number 5. Patrick Rothfuss and the Kingkiller Chronicles. The greatest wizard of all times has disappeared. No one knows what happened to him. He used to be the stuff of legends and rumours, and now he has vanished with the wind, until the day he decides to tell his own version of events. Born into a family of touring troopers who mysteriously get assassinated by some warriors that are believed to be the stuff of legend, only Quoth decides that he is going to confront them and take revenge upon the horrors they have inflicted on his life. He decides to go to the Magician's University, which again is only for rich, privileged people, and he's not one of them, but he manages to get in anyway because he's that smart. Fighting battles and loving a woman who is very strange, but and going on to become the hero everyone knows him as. What I love about this series is this character is very obsessive, which I can relate to, honestly. I know I am very partial to a good obsession. And the fact that he's very poor and has no family and no situation is also something that comes up a lot, because it's basically a part of his daily life. And I like the fact that that's gone into with a lot more depth than it normally is, especially even more than Trudi Canavan's novel, because there is no one to pay his university fees and he has to struggle along, and it's very much, you know, a worry of his daily life of like, oh my god, I haven't got any money, how am I going to eat, how am I going to pay rent? And that's something that's very much, you know, something a lot of us can relate to, I think, and it really is how you feel. You do think about it all the time when you are destitute. So thank you, Patrick Rothfuss, for including that in this absolutely epic story. There is a third novel to this series, I believe, about a character called Ori, who lives under the university and that Croft comes upon seemingly by accident, and she kind of went insane, and they have a sort of mental asylum for wizards who go insane at the university, because it actually happens quite a lot. And she decided to flee. Instead of being committed, she took refuge underneath the university, so she lives in the sewers, and she has a very unique way of seeing the world. And I believe that this third book is about her and sort of the world seen through her eyes. So I'll definitely get hold of that and come back to you and go into this series in more depth, because this is wonderful. Number 6. The Septimus Heap series. Yeah. Followed by the Todd Hunter Moon series. 10 books for you. So this is a children's fantasy series, but, you know, I'll read anything. If it looks good and it's got pages in it, I will read it. And I do very much recommend this series. This is very different from a lot of fantasy series. It's also very funny, because I like funny things, like Brandon Sanderson's Alcatraz. It's very, very funny. So this is set in a castle with its surrounding city, and the city and castle is run by a very evil man, a very evil wizard who sort of controls everything. And it starts off with a rather odd sort of three-way babies being exchanged story, as in there is this family the father is a 7th son, and he has just had a 7th son who is taken away in exchange for another baby. The 7th son is supposed to be apprenticed to the dark magician, only he doesn't get there because babies get exchanged again. So the dark magician ends up with this boy who's not very gifted with magic, and it's rather odd to find that he's the 7th son. Is he really? The actual 7th son's family with the other 7 sons get given a princess in exchange for their baby, and the real 7th son ends up in what they refer to as the young army camp for boys. When all of this stuff finally gets sorted out and all the babies are returned to their rightful families, them being young teenagers now, you know, the Septimus Heap, the real 7th son, is actually able to resume his position as the apprentice to the extraordinary wizard, the most powerful wizard in the castle, who is this extraordinary character called Marcia Overstand, who's just this incredibly matter-of-factly formidable woman, who also is very loving. She's very strict, but also kind of very caring. And I really like her, and there are a lot of characters, and they do a lot of funny things, and also it does get quite dark, despite the fact there's a sort of very amusing setting. It does get very dark sometimes. But yeah, there are 10 books to be getting on with. Number 7, I think. Absolutely anything by Terry Pratchett. Ideally all of them. Which gives you another 41 books in the Discworld series, plus all the other stuff he's written on his own or in collaboration with other writers like Good Omens with Neil Gaiman. Do I really need to explain what the Discworld series is all about? It is a satirical comedy fantasy series set on the Discworld, which is a disc world, literally, which sits on the back of 4 elephants, which sit on the back of a massive turtle, which flies through space. Just that on its own. The stories follow a variety of characters, such as wizards, heroes, movie stars, Father Christmas, and other people. So I'm going to end this here because my memory stick is telling me that it's almost full. But I could go on, I could talk about KJ Parker, I could talk about Jonathan Stroud. I did hesitate to talk about the Bliss Bakery, but I think I've already done enough about that. It's still my most watched video, thank you. So yes, fantasy series. There is a lot of brilliant fantasy writing going on, and it doesn't all end with, you know, Lord of the Rings and Game of Thrones, even though they are brilliant to read. And if you are still stuck for something to read, George R.R. Martin has written other stuff, quite a lot of other stuff, in fact. I would recommend the Armageddon Rag and Tuf Voyaging. They're not fantasy, they're more science fiction, but they're still pretty entertaining. So yeah, have a look at George R.R. Martin's other stuff, and please stop whining about the last season of Game of Thrones. Just read the books, okay? Read the books. Read books and stop whining. And on the basis of that, I will see you all soon. Bye-bye.
Sleepy cat. Sleepy cat. Oh, look at you. You're so pretty. Oh, dear, look at this. This is an unhappy animal right here. Look at that cruelty. I know. You never fed, you never get cuddles, and you never get love. And you don't get to go on YouTube either. Oh, actually, you do. You get all of those things, don't you? The beautiful fur